job title. There really isn't one. So I'm just calling it being Hannah Moscovitch. So Hannah Moscovitches, they produce, they write, they advise, they talk down actors' relentless questioning of the scripts. Hannah Moscovitches live in a realm of gray spaces and dark matter, creating some of the bleakest, most harrowing scenes that you can come up with. Hannah Moscovitches guide the show alongside co-collaborator Roland Jones to make one of the most stirring, monumental, unique shows I feel that's ever been created. And most importantly, Hannah Moscovitches know how to rock the hell out of a jumpsuit. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome Hannah Moscovitch to the Brown Room today. Hannah Moscovitch.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for joining me. And I just want to start off by seriously congratulating you on the end of this season because I know that you guys have had a lot of mountains to climb and hurdles to jump over, but what you've managed to pull off is incredible. I've never had a show make me mad, make me cry, make me laugh, make me celebrate and wander around the streets at night. Probably shouldn't do that, but that's what it did quite to the level that this show has. Like it's truly an accomplishment. And I'm just like very grateful that you guys stuck it through and made this show for me.
Thank you.
Well, to dive into like the specifics of the show and everything, I want to jump ahead by starting at the very end of this episode, but also the very start of the season as a whole, where we've like sandwiched season 3 with these two scenes that are foreshadowing events that would presumably happen after a potential season 4. I mean, it's like delicious and tantalizing and maddening. Where did the idea come up? Like, how did that idea come about of you guys bookending the season with these glimpses to what's to come?
Yeah. So that came about as part of us trying to figure out who was telling the story of this season and how, like what the mechanisms were for Lestat to be talking to us. And this season, we do a bunch of them. We have Lestat talk to Daniel as part of a rock doc, but then the main mechanism we're using is that he's, created the failures. Like he's decided to interview himself. And he, in the wake of worldwide catastrophe and an attempted extermination of the Y chromosome, and he has, in the light of those failures, decided to speak to us about what he did. And so, yeah, the final reveal is him in his apartment in Montreal, and then a sense of the destruction that happened all around him. And you get to see it up close for the first time. And so, yeah, no, I mean, those pieces we had right from the beginning. We kind of knew because we had to solve, and I shouldn't say it like that. In fact, we didn't have them right from the beginning. What we had was a big question about how we were going to frame season 3. And also because in the book, Anne Rice more or less just plunges us into the past and just talks about the past without addressing the present. And we felt this like we were beholden to the present that we had created between Louis and Lestat, and we wanted to continue to include Louis in the story and to have their toxic romance be at the center of the story. And so then we were, how do we do all of this? How do we pull in the past and pull in the present and have it be from Lestat's point of view and reinvent the show and not have him just sit with Daniel again and, relive the past or relitigate it? Like, how do we do all of those things? And yeah, and so what ended up happening was Rollin wrote that initial scene, which is the auction scene, and then we loaded it with as many things that we would have to earn in season 4 if we were to get one as we could, like Armand's eye and Louis' leg.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just loaded the bases and we knew we would have to earn those things later.
Oh yeah, many things to keep us scratching our heads until we see them arise. I am curious. I do kind of want to take you back to like initial moments of like being in the writer's room for this season. Because you and Roland have both talked about like having ideas for this season all the way back in season one and season two. And I'm just curious because it did seem like there's a little bit of a slow like start and stop with the writing of the season and where songs kind of came before story. Um, how like from your original vision that you guys kind of conceived of in seasons one and season two, how much do you think that that has changed just like over time and how you grew different ideas and then also like scheduling budget stuff like that? How did that manifest and how close is like this version that we got from that original vision that you guys had way back when?
Well, it just comes in little pieces. And so back in Prague, when we would have been talking about it all, we knew small things, and we often start with, psychology. So we knew, we knew pieces of what Lestat's journey might be, that the music would break him open and fuck him up and heal him, and that all of those things would happen at the same time. We knew that the music was a way into the past for him, and that as he wrote about music, he would be forced to deal with memories that he hadn't. Like, he seems like a character who goes so relentlessly forward and then doesn't actually think through like what the the shadow is that's in him because of what's happened in the past. And so we were like, right, like for us as artists, we know what it's like to start to write about something and then to realize that you're really fucked up about the thing that you're writing about. And then for the writing to both make you force is confrontational, like the writing that we do forces us to confront our own histories, our personal histories, and then it forces us to heal them, as we write. And we knew that that would be part of what was going to happen for Lestat, that, huge pieces of his life that he has never had to think about are now going to be coming to him through his music. And music is going to feel at first like a way for him to talk back to Interview with the Vampire, the book by Louis and Daniel Malloy, but it is also going to fundamentally change his soul. And so we knew those pieces fairly early on, but then we were just like, trying to think them through, how those huge pieces hit a season. That just takes endless amount of refining and work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about Lestat's soul and psyche, I mean, we've got to talk about the long table and how you guys have kind of transported us to the astral plane for 50% of this episode. I mean, it's a wild choice, and there's like there's not quite precedent in it within the books, and but yet it feels very in line with Anne's writings and what she was kind of thinking about all the time when she explored like these other worlds and is there an afterlife and maybe not how much of it is just like us and consciousness. So I have to know like where did that initial idea come from and how like was it were you trepidatious about like spending half of the episode like in this metaphysical realm?
Yes. And also, and also, we knew it was the playing ground because we had been up in his soul for so much of for so much of the series. Like that's what the discussion was, like the very fabric of what his soul was. So we knew it's where we were going, and it felt like, we were going to run. Like initially, some of the ideas were like, we're going to go through a bunch of the sets that we've already seen, and we're going to like have them be all up in his head and transformed by his thoughts. And we know that we're going to have all of the people there who he failed, anyone who he was violent towards, particularly, like all of those people are going to come back. And those images like that was very early, like knowing that that would be there, that there would be a reckoning for Lestat in his own soul. And for sure, Anne Rice is so up in this question around the division of body and soul,
Oh
and
yeah.
so up in questions around like, you know, um, morality and like failure and existentialism and like a religious take on the soul and if the soul exists in the way religion believes it to. And so we knew we were going to be playing with like big heady ideas like that from early on because we knew what we were talking about was Lestat's soul and that was shockingly enough going to form the arc of the season.
Yeah. Well, so obviously, like big, huge themes of this season has been failure and identity and the soul. But another theme that has always been present since season one, but I just wasn't quite expecting it to be driven home as much as it was within this season and this episode, specifically, was just like the importance and complexities of love within people's lives, like even when it's broken and battered and failed. And obviously, we've been like the whole overarching story is all tied up in this romance between Louis and Lestat. And I think this season we've really seen, kind of how they can pull each other back from the depths of destruction and also push each other to those depths of destruction. Um, and what I took away from this is that like they're both just like not done with each other. Like maybe if they're done with themselves, they're not done with each other, and that's what's going to pull them through and the could be of it all. And I'm just curious, like, how did you guys decide on the romantic development of Lou and Lestat's journey throughout this season and in this episode specifically?
Well, we knew that there would be, a gentle coming back together at the very beginning of the season, and that the publishing of the book would interrupt it because it's a secret that Louis has been holding from Lestat. And then, of course, the version of Lestat that Louis delivers into this book is a version that, you know,
It's not great.
it doesn't make Lestat feel very good about himself and makes him want to rewrite it in the way he knows how, which is through music and performance. That's his art form or his art forms his go-to art forms, like we know he's Lelio. Um, and we know, he likes to perform and he's a beautiful musician. And so he's coming at a piece of art, which is this memoir, in his own way. And of course, like within all of this is like once again a big division, a big interruption in the relationship between Louis and Lestat. But we knew that at some crucial point, as they're both relitigating their trauma, Louis in relationship to Claudia, and then Lestat in relationship to his 265 years, and Magnus, and Nikki, and Gabriella in particular,
Yeah.
and all of his thoughts and feelings and needs and desires and hopes around love itself, that at some point we would need to bring Louis and Lestat back together when they were at, in the sharpest, most jagged parts of their trauma with each other. And that they would, as you said so beautifully, both help and fail each other. Because I think, an endless theme of the show for us is that all of the characters are flawed and all of the characters lie and all of the characters are beautiful and vulnerable and have breakable parts and are lovable. Sorry, breakable. Did I say breakable parts? Breakable hearts. And they're
Both.
lovable. I'm like so different, breakable hearts, and that they're vulnerable and beautiful and needy and desperate and sad and terrible and romantic and toxic, that they're all of the things at once, that they are everything at once always, these characters, and that we just see different facets of them in different seasons, and there isn't a character who I don't love and who I don't envision us loving at some point, deeply loving. So yes, love was a huge theme, but to answer your question properly, yes, we knew we would have to bring our Louis and our Lestat back together at at a shock point, at a flashpoint in the story, like we did. Yeah.
It's a very just like simple reunion between the two of them, and where they just kind of fall right back into where they left off. Is there any other discussion of what it could look like, or was it like, no, it's just gonna them falling back into their little places together?
We actually wanted to err on the side of simplicity and to do something, you know, that would be distinct for the two of them. That would mean we had images of them walking the streets of Montreal together. And that came really early. And we were like, and then a restaurant and then a bar, which is so simple for the kind of show we normally do, where we're like, and then, you know, behind them in a villa, an entire building of French people are being murdered while they flirt. Like we were like, instead of the, you know, and then vampires on motorcycles. Like instead of that, we were like, and then they just walk around Montreal together and they sit on a bench like they did in season one. So it felt very like simple for us and very like, you know, romantic and very controlled, but that it would be this new version of them, this version of them that is that they know each other more, they're more traumatized, they're more vulnerable, they're more fucked up, they're, you know, they're more of all of the things. Like they're deep into you know, whatever this is between them, that, you know, they're deeper into this. I was going to say marriage, they're deeper in, you know.
It is. It's a marriage. Where
Yeah,
that's what we all call it. Yeah.
yeah.
So the most world-stopping, groundbreaking, incredible moment in this episode for me is the return of Paul and, you know, him being that one at the end where Lestat is confronting all of his failures and how all the
It
people he
makes me
loved the
cry to
most.
talk about it.
I literally have in my notes here, I'm sitting on my porch boo-hooing in public, like writing this question, because just thinking about it makes me like tear up and cry. I mean, just tell me everything about how you guys landed on how it was going to be Paul who appeared to Lestat here.
That was Rowan. And he walked into my office one day and he was like, it's Paul. It's Paul at the end. Because we had been talking about all of the people who were dead or alive who would come to Lestat at the end. You know, like that he would be in, you know, walking through all of these rooms and revisiting all of these relationships that he had already like he like walking through his own history in these, you know, abstracted and bizarre and beautiful and uncanny ways. And then that was Rowan who came up with that and who said, you know, it's going to be Paul who is dead, who is going to be the one to tell Lestat how much Louis really loves him. And I think, and we were both crying. I was like, jaw dropped when he said that. I hope it's okay to say that.
I'm like getting teary-eyed just now hearing you talk about it.
Because it's like that is what we want, right? Like we want our lovers' family to love us and we want to hear that we're loved. Like fundamentally, there's something so that is everything and that is the answer about love and hearing it and knowing, like, you know, and Louis has never said it to him and Louis has withheld and Louis has abandoned him like his mother did. And, you know, like Louis has, you know, not always been able to love him in the way he needed to be loved. And but, you know, as always with our characters, that might be because Lestat's a fucking monster, you know. So it's like it's never going to be simple. There's never going to be something easy. Like we turn and turn and turn. Like I never fault Louis for the way in which he loves Lestat because he loves him as best as Louis knows how. And there's just, yeah, so to me, I just was so moved when Roland realized that the final moments of Lestat's consciousness were going to be, you know, a reassurance that he is loved from Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a return of Paul into the show. And it just felt like it, for me, it was such an emotional, character based ending, like a moment of great vulnerability between characters and not showy, you know?
And
Um,
so earned. Like it's once, because of course, yeah, as you see him walking up, I'm like, who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? And I'm like rattling off all of these guesses of who it, and never once did I think. But as soon as he comes into frame, again, just immediate boohoo waterworks. But I'm like, who else would it be? Like this is the most perfect person for like this arc between like Lestat and Louis, and just all of Paul being the last one to tell Louis that he loved him, and like that, trauma that he holds on to, and the whole kind of back and forth between Louis and Lestat, how he always wondered, did he have something to do with his death? And it's just so full circle. I love how you guys have these details and revisit.
We like a full circle.
We love a full circle.
We like to recall. like to, we like to reference our own stupid show a whole lot, apparently.
And I like that too. It shows that like you care and like you're paying attention and you're doing things with intention, which just feels really special. Like it really does feel like you guys are wanting to make something that will have that kind of infinite rewatchability and like for the fans and for the audience. So it's a very, very special show, I have to say.
Hope for that anyway.
We're gonna switch gears a little bit to not quite so love everything because we've got to talk about Armand this episode. Because I know I said that I wanted to see him go full gremlin, but I wasn't expecting how horrific full gremlin would be, and especially not to my beautiful depressed princess Louis. Like of all of the people, I assumed, and I think a lot of other fans assumed that getting this level of reproach and rage from Armand, the person who would get that would be Lestat. But then there is this 77 years that Louis and Armand have had together that needs a lot of unpacking. How did you guys decide that, yeah, we're going to have this confrontation between Armand and Louis, not Armand and Lestat?
I think it came partly out of the writing of it. Like we talked a lot about the order in which Armand would make amends. And we talked about who the amends were owed to the most. And then who in particular it was that Armand, because I think, we had lots and lots of thoughts about where Armand is at and how, Armand, so much of who Armand is needing a system or a system of belief or a center or a person to hold on to in the madness and loneliness of life. And we wondered what it would be like if he did not have that, like what he would be and what he would do. And like what happens when you lose your religion, like what happens when you lose your center? What happens when the person you've been with for 77 years and the big lie comes out and it all is taken away and crashes down on you? Like, what do you do? And like, you blame yourself, you blame others, like all of that happens and you rove for how could this happen to you and who did this to you, but also how did you do this to yourself? And so we were like, we really thought through like, what is that relationship with Lestat? And what do they feel about each other? And what does Armand have to make amends for there? Same with Daniel. And then we couldn't stop landing on like the one he really wants to have the big confrontation with is Louis, because they're the ones that were locked into this 77 years together and had this whole life together. And, Louis said to him, like, you are the love of my life. And he had centered his whole life around Louis. And then that was all ripped away. And again, like always with us, like there's a justification for why Louis left. Like, one, like, Armand is a horribly flawed character. Like, he did all sorts of terrible shit to our princess Louis.
Yeah.
So then, we ended up in this zone of like, this like Armand would have his Armends to make for sure, but he would also be asking for something in return from Louis. And then we, obviously it's such a complicated apology for Louis to make because his head is on a spike. So, obviously that calls into question everything he says because he is trying to extricate himself and Regina, who is an innocent in all of this. To whatever degree I exonerate her, I guess. But, she's been working with Armand or was willing to take his money to do this with him. So, you have this like, it just felt like such a rich territory for this relationship between Armand and Louis to like be brought to the fore one more time, you know? So yeah, that's what we were after. Yeah, and we were, obviously looking for at the same time that like Lestat is finding out from Paul that Louis really loved him, that Louis is able to admit to Armand, like, I didn't love you in the way you needed to be loved, given what your history was, and given what happened to you in your life, and you know, given what happened to you at 12 when you were sold into a brothel, given what happened to you with, you know, subsequently to like, I'm saying that so lightly, but like, what the fuck, like for Armand, like my son is 11, like sold into a brothel at 12, at 12. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. I think that's was all up in our heads. Like we were like, when is this, relationship between Armand and Louis going to, like, when is that going to happen? We know Armand is in the wind. We know Lestat's left him. Sorry, Louis has left him. And like, when is Armand gonna come back with some questions about how their relationship ended? Like, when you do
Yeah.
that, pick up the phone 6 months after your ex broke up with you, and you're like, hey, so I've been thinking, and
Yeah.
I have some questions about how that shit ended between us. And I need you to fucking talk to me about it now. Like I
Yeah.
know there are those moments where you've had that 77-year relationship with someone and you're just like, okay, that ended really dramatically. To make you talk to me, I'm going to have to hold you hostage, you know? Yeah.
And
So,
put it all out quite literally on the table.
yes. Oh God. And there of course is like our genre elements and our vampire elements.
Yeah. No, we definitely got into that horror realm here.
Yeah.
I would love to keep talking about Armand, but we've got to talk. There's another big, big character that we have to talk about, of course, um, which is Gabriella. This has been the huge, huge new introduction of this season.
Yeah.
And something that you guys as a writing team do, you don't shy away from like these more uncomfortable parts of like Anne's texts, and instead like of glossing over these uneasy elements, like this weird relationship between Lestat and Gabriella and their sexual undercurrent there. You really like said, no, let's look it in the eye and let's spotlight this relationship and all of the psychological and relational ramifications that this could have. And you guys have also, you've made some like bigger adaptational differences with Gabriella too, like with having to like bring her into the modern storyline and everything, and how much she's like, we see her like actively exploiting and using and manipulating Lestat to serve her own ends. And I'm like, it's very different from like the rough, rugged wanderer from the book. So I was wondering what made you decide to like take this more confrontational route with her character, and were you afraid of how like book fans might feel about those changes?
I mean, of course, whenever we change anything from the book, we're always so aware, you know, because so many of these characters are so iconic and people have so many expectations and very rightfully like great desires around who these characters are. So we never do anything lightly. But we do sometimes want to parse out over more than one season the arc of any particular character. And we do sometimes want to show you one side of a character before we show you the other side. And we want to go through one point of view before we complicate it by going through another point of view. So, I think, we also did want to bring Gabriella into the present and not just have her be a piece of the past, because so much balance was of the present. And so we felt it was so important that we see her now and where she's at now. And I think there's just so much. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about Gabriella, and I'm saying it really carefully. I do also think that I will say this. I think that my experience in life is that those people who have been victimized the worst are sometimes victimizers, and they are sometimes the worst people. And it's so terrible because you know that they are a victim themselves. And from that victimhood is coming so much of their horrible behavior. And so I think we in particular this season wanted to talk about Lestat and the impact that a mother like this could have on Lestat, a mother who has turned a son into a husband, could have on a son, you know. And so that was very important because we're talking about Lestat's soul and how it's formed, and a relationship with your mother is at the very center of your soul,
Yeah.
and so we need to talk about like what that was. And there was this sort of, within the books there is a current of sexuality between these two characters, and there is a leaning on Lestat that happens, a desire to live through him in some way. She says he is the man in me, a desire for him to be something for her. And so I think we took the very kernel of that and we expanded that. Like if there is a sense of ownership from Gabriella over Lestat, like if she feels like he is a part of her rather than his own being, then what does that look like? And what does that feel like?
Yeah.
And like also for Lestat, what does it feel like if the person who loves you the most also hurts you the most? And how then do you like live inside of that? How do you live with that? That this person you need and who loves you so much is also just viewing you as a part of themselves, to be left or to be used or to be used towards certain ends, like the great conversion, you
Mhm.
know, and like also for Gabriella, a desire for chaos can come from pain, like a desire for great chaos to happen on earth, for everything to be destroyed can come from such a deep place of pain. So there you go. I've told you all of my my thinking and feeling about Gabriella, but I just want everyone to know and you to know how much I love her, how much she means to me, I'm in it with her. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that's something that you guys with, I mean, we're into season 3 now, and you've not been letting me down yet. So it's like the questions that have developed within season 3, especially with this season and seeing how much payoff from seasons 1 and seasons 2 that we've had now that we've had to wait so long for. I'm like, you guys, I'm in
We
the
make
golf cart
everyone
right
wait.
along with you.
We're on our own clock, but I hold so tenderly all of the people who have such hopes. Like I really, really do. I hold all of you in my heart, like all the people whose hopes I know are out there in the world. I hold them, and I love you all. Yeah.
Well, I'm very, very excited to see because I can see the threads. I see very much what you guys are building towards, and I can't wait to see how it plays out in future seasons and everything. But continuing on with this relationship between Lisette and Gabriella, he does finally have this moment where he confronts Gabriella and asks why she took him to the witch's place. And the witch's place is, again, it's another adaptational change that you guys have kind of made. And I really, really love how you've repackaged it from, because in the books, it's not something that he witnessed. And it's more about like his questions about like what else is out there and the unknown and goodness. Whereas now you've made it into
Yeah.
this moment of like pain and trauma and generational trauma. And we see how this act he goes on and he does that to Claudia. Like, how did you guys land on this being about like childhood and generational trauma and everything else wrapped up with that?
Yeah, I mean, that is the kind of thing that ends up getting layered and layered and layered within the writing and within the writing room. Like, for sure, I can remember the conversations that were around, like, well, in the book, it's exactly like it does this, and like because we're in a visual medium, you know, it has impact then, or like it can be very meaningful to see it for real, like to be there in this moment of it happening. And I know we had a lot of conversations about, you know, Gabriella's particular version of trying to protect him here, or trying to, and like what protection can look like when it is potentially abusive, like what
Yeah.
desire to protect when it is turns ugly, and that can be repeated through generations like we have. And then we also talked about like the impact of seeing people, like the most radical extremes of people who have been othered, like othered because they're like women and they're believed to be witches, who are othered because they're like you bisexual and they may not have a place in their small town. You know what I mean? Like that othering, that it leads to extreme moments of violence, or like where we shift blame to when we want to keep certain people safe, and how we are able to shift it onto the people who are othered. And like just seeing that all as a spectacle, and what that would do to someone emotional and philosophical like young Lestat, you know, like that would be a defining moment for him to have seen such a like radical incarnation of like hatred and shifting of blame, and what that would do to him. Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes along with exactly what you were saying earlier about like victims, like a lot of times it being the worst ones to then go on and victimize, which we see with like Gabriella and Lestat and Claudia. And like I can totally see in some weird twisted way how Gabriella does think this is for the good of her son. Like this,
She's
but
trying to get him out of there. She's like, watch what will happen if you stay. You
yeah.
sweet, emotional, intelligent, bisexual.
Um, so with how this season ends, Rollins kind of made some comments here and there about how he likes for the writer's room to write yourselves into corners. And I was curious if you could have any like examples from past seasons or past moments where as you're writing, you're like, I don't know how we're gonna get out of this. And then the journey you went on to figure out how to get out of there. And then from there, what corners do you feel like you guys have painted yourself into this season?
Oh my God, there's nothing but corners going forward. Like it's all corners. But yeah, no, you know what? An example that comes to mind right away is Farid, because we knew we were writing him in for a reason. Like we knew that Lestat had taken, Louis' biographer, doctor. You know, like we knew that we knew he'd like, stolen a bunch of Lestat's people, or sorry, Louis' people. Um, and then we were like, we knew, but it came late that Farid was there because he was doing medical scientific research, and that he would be in the room with Louis and Armand and Regina at the end. Like that came late, but we figured it out. We were like, so we painted ourselves into that corner. We knew he needed to be there, but we weren't totally sure what we were doing. And now, of course, going forward, if we're so lucky as to go forward, um, yeah, like, well, now we owe an apocalypse, among other things. But what the fuck happened between the end of season 3 and then the frame device that we have shown everybody at the beginning and end? Like now we owe so much. Yeah, the balance of what we owe is massive.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm very curious about because Lestat wakes up in the coffin and he like runs, he has his little reunion with Louis, and Gabriella comes back and is like, no, so we're gonna do this concert still, right? And he says flat, like he refuses, he's not going to go out on stage, and he calls her a fucking monster, which I loved. But I'm like, okay, so, but it does happen though. So how are we getting to the point where it does still happen? Like all of these little things and all of these little crumbs and like so many things throughout the season where I'm like, all right, y'all figure it out.
I know.
Well, Hannah, with that, we do unfortunately have to wrap up. Um, So I shall do my shot through the heart with you, my toast to all of your incredible contributions to this series and this final episode. It's really, there's like not a heart left of all the times I've been shot through it now at this point. So, cheers to you, Hannah Moscovitch, and all of your incredible, harrowing, beautiful writing and just work on this whole show. Cheers.
Thank you, Autumn. That means a lot.
I wish I could pass it through the screen here and give you
I
some.
know. I'm like, I would also like some.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Autumn.
Bye. Guess that's my time. Silver threads. How the hell do I get up there?